Hey everyone, welcome back to a new week of the Bible. Wait, what?
You really do that so well.
Hello, Amanda.
Hello. Thanks
And
for
it is
having
the
me.
week before Christmas. Not the night before Christmas, but it is the week before Christmas.
Well, sort of.
We're recording it on Friday the 13th, but by the time this is being listened to, it will be the week before Christmas, won't it? Yes. So the week before Christmas and all through the church, all sorts of things have been happening. Mouses have been stirring. It's been a full-on time, but we are looking forward to celebrating Christmas, and we're sort of moving through the book of Luke. We're midway through the book at the moment, and this week's episode we're going to be doing Luke 13 to 17. And we're on the clock today because you've got to perform this afternoon, your husband, haven't you?
Yes. We're going to do our kids show, which we don't often don the super suits anymore, but we're doing it.
Oh, you're doing the kids show?
Yes,
okay.
we're doing
Super
our
Kenny
kids
and
show.
Magnificent Manda.
Yes,
Okay. I
we're
haven't
doing
seen that for a while.
a school, one of the local public schools fundraiser. They're going to do a colour run, and we're going to be some musical entertainment while they all have lunch. So
cool. All right. Well, we're going to be doing our goal is 20 minutes tops per episode, and these are long chapters. So as is all the Gospels, but these are particularly long as well in Luke. So we are going to just we're not going to scratch the surface. We'll literally just top of the mountaintop of each chapter and some food for thought, probably.
And before we were talking about what we're going to do today, and you mentioned, and I thought it'd be worth mentioning, that next year we're taking a deeper dive into the red letter Jesus.
Yes, we'll spend a lot of time back in these chapters.
So I'm actually really looking forward to that,
too.
especially after going through all of these chapters in preparation for this. I think it's going to be a really good year.
We are going to know Jesus a lot better through the things he teaches, the things he says next year. Yep, we're going to discover what it is to live the kingdom life, which is what Jesus was all about. Yeah,
cool. Okay, so let's get cracking.
All right, Luke 13.
Luke 13, it's a long one. It is, like you said, it's a really long one. It's kind of broken up, though, into 6 or 7-ish parts, but they all kind of blend together at some stage.
There's a common thread. Through each chapters, but he often pieces the stories together to follow that common thread through.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Luke. Luke and Acts Luke has written more of the New Testament than Paul.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When you put Luke and Acts together, it's longer than all of Paul's writings all combined.
Which I think is amazing considering he wasn't a disciple.
Not initially, no.
Not
No,
initially,
that's right.
yes.
No, he wasn't one of Jesus' original ones. So he's done a lot of research. So, there's a lot of depth in these chapters. So, all right, take it away. Where are we going to go?
Well, the first question I really had was, so he kicks it off with a call to repentance.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kind of obvious stuff there, but then he talks about the barren fig tree. Can we please talk about the barren fig tree, please?
Yep. Okay.
Because, so if someone came along with no other context,
Yep.
how would you explain to them what Jesus is actually trying to say here?
Yep.
But second of all, I guess a bit of a follow-up question, it kind of really cuts off abruptly in this little section before he goes to the healing on the Sabbath part. Okay, so I'll rephrase that again. How would you explain this to someone?
Sure.
What Jesus is trying to say.
What Jesus is trying to say in the parable of the barren fig tree. The first thing is you need some historical context. Fig trees are an essential tree all over Israel.
Also very delicious.
Also very delicious. Yes, I love my caramelized fig yogurt. But yes, they are a very, very popular fruit in Israel, and became certainly at this time and even still today a symbolic of the nation of Israel as a nation. So when Jesus is talking about fig trees, they know he's talking about the nation of Israel. So you can then take this parable where he says, they planted it and it didn't produce fruit, and they were about to rip the whole thing out of the ground, and he said, no. The owner says, give it another go. Well, no, so the owner's ready to rip it out of the ground, and the farmer says, let's give it another go. Let's see if we can produce some fruit, and if not, we'll pull it out. So in its context, Jesus, all the way through here, he is reprimanding, challenging the Jewish people, especially the Jewish elites, the religious Jews, the people who claim to be the authority in Israel. He is calling them on the fact that they have not lived up to covenant standards. He's operating like an Old Testament prophet, which is what they did, always challenging the ruling elites and powers and saying, you guys haven't lived up to your covenant, caring for the poor and looking after the vulnerable and shining my light to the world and being a light to the Gentiles and all that. And he's challenging them on. He's going, you guys are like that fig tree that isn't producing fruit.
Yeah.
That's he's calling them on their behavior. And that's what he's saying. He just ends it abruptly, but if you look at it in its context of what he's doing, it's just another short parable that Luke has inserted here to tell the people that they're not being fruitful to what they were supposed to be.
Right.
And I guess does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's pretty good. That kind of answers a lot of the questions for the rest of it, really. But I guess I have some pretty obvious ones as well as we move forward, move down the chapter. The next part, verses 10 to 17, is the healing on the Sabbath.
One of the many healings on the Sabbath.
Yes. So there's actually there's 7 recorded.
Yes, I know, because as I was putting together next year's Bible reading plan, I realised how many records of healings on the Sabbath. They're scattered throughout the Bible plan everywhere. There's so many of them. 7?
Yeah, so there's 7 different.
In Luke or across the Gospels?
So I Googled this.
Yeah. Is that just in Luke there's 7 recorded?
No, across the Gospels. So
Okay.
I had them written down, but I don't have them in front of me now. But there is.
I noticed how many there was. I didn't pay
I think
attention.
I might
Yeah.
have it. Jesus heals on the Sabbath. Here we go. Yeah. So the casting out a demon in the synagogue, which is in Luke and Mark.
Okay, so 7 different ones.
Yeah,
And some of them are more than once.
Yeah. Healing of Peter's mother-in-law in Mark and Luke. Healing of the man born blind. That's just in John. Healing of the man at the pool of Bethesda. Yep, that one.
Yep.
In John. Healing of the man with dropsy. What's dropsy?
It's like I don't know. I'm not a medical person. I think it's like lupus. It's
Anyway, that's in Luke.
So. Can't remember.
Then healing of the woman crippled for 18 years, which we'll get to
that's
that.
in Luke's coming up today, I think.
Yep. And then the healing of the man with a withered hand.
Yep, gotcha.
So they're the 7 different ones that are recorded in the Gospels. And I just thought 7 was a cool number. Okay, so one question though. Why does Jesus challenge the Sabbath, yet it's important to keep the Sabbath?
Oh, good question.
Is it really talking about the extremes and about legalism? And really, how does that connect with everything else in this chapter?
We'll definitely come back to the Sabbath in great detail next year because Jesus teaches on it in a lot of context. But here we go. In a nutshell, the Sabbath is part of the creation mandate. The 7th day, God rested. Therefore, God rests. Therefore, we are commanded to rest, or they were commanded to rest on the Sabbath. So it was put into the mandate as a way of actually being, for people who'd been in slavery in Egypt, to actually be allowed to have a Sabbath, have a day off, was huge. And it was a trust issue that God would provide for them and they wouldn't work on that Sabbath. So what was supposed to be something that would give them joy and freedom and experience God's goodness, free from having to make their own money, free from having to feel like they're responsible for their own provision. It's God's way of saying, hey, you trust me, I provide for you. I've given you all the fruit in the garden. That was the concept. That was what it was for. What the Jews had done in the process of trying to abide by the Sabbath is they turned it into a work in itself. So rather than being the opposite of what it was intended to be, what it was intended to be was a release from work. They had made it into a religious work. And in the process of doing that, they were looking down and judging people who they thought weren't keeping the Sabbath. Along comes Jesus and does things like heals repeatedly on the Sabbath, breaks their traditional Sabbath rules, not breaks the law, but breaks the traditions that they had put in place about what you could and couldn't do on the Sabbath, eating grain on the Sabbath, etc. And Jesus was trying to say, and famously does say, in the older languages, it says, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other words, the Sabbath serves you, you don't serve it.
Yeah.
The purpose of the Sabbath is to enjoy God's goodness. And then he'll say things like, well, why wouldn't God want to heal on the Sabbath? Why wouldn't God want to provide on the Sabbath? Why wouldn't God want to have you enjoy life on the Sabbath? That's what it's about.
Yeah.
So that is what he's constantly coming at. They thought that healing was a medical work. It was doing work on the Sabbath. So they were prepared to sacrifice the blessing of God for a person who is sick and saying, come and get healed any other day, but don't come on the Sabbath. And Jesus is just showing them the utter stupidity of that mindset. It's just crazy. He's going, you've got it completely upside down.
Yeah.
So that's why he went around almost picking fights with people because he was so frustrated with their legalism, which was getting in the way of the very purpose for the Sabbath.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking as I was writing this down, and I think I might have written it down a little bit later, that it seemed like you said, he was picking the fight if he hadn't done those things, if he'd done them in secret, what would have happened? What would have the outcome of the Jesus story, of his ministry and how we know what ultimately happens, would that have differed?
Yes, I suspect that his Sabbath healings, if you read the narratives of the scripture, his Sabbath healings seem to be a big part of why the religious authorities were ticked off with him. So I think he's partly doing it to show them up, but also because he knows that it's going to lead him towards the cross. They're going to get ticked off with him about it.
Yeah.
But he's up for that.
Yeah.
If he had done it in secret, well, not only that, would that have potentially they wouldn't have known, but we also wouldn't have had the benefit of this kingdom teaching, which is do good even on the Sabbath. Do good whenever you can. That's what Jesus is saying all the way through here. So it's a kingdom value. It's a kingdom life principle by which he wants us to live. I remember on The Chosen, it might have been the end of one of the seasons, I think it was, might have been right at the end of one of the seasons, when he healed the man at the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath, and Jesus walks away and the religious people start to get ticked off with him. And he says, sometimes you just got to stir the water. And it was the whole thing of the water.
Yes.
He says, sometimes you got to stir the water. And it was this very clever way of them saying Jesus was picking a fight. But he was picking a fight because their hypocrisy was the opposite of God's kingdom values.
Yeah, I actually wrote in my notes for the chapter 14 part of Jesus heals on the Sabbath, poke the bear,
Poke the bear, yeah, exactly. That's what Jesus was doing.
It's like he's provoking controversy. But I've also written here, prioritize compassion over rules.
You got it. That is exactly that. You've answered the question. In a nutshell, if you read these Sabbath narratives that Jesus heals, feeds, all that through that, would you say compassion over
rules?
Rules, yep. If you read it through that, because they put rules over compassion. And it wasn't always bad. They were intending, originally, I've talked about this on the podcast before, they didn't want to break the rules, so they started putting fences around the rules, and then they put fences around the fences around the fences. And the process of doing that, for fear of breaking the rule, they actually missed the purpose of the rule. And we did Deuteronomy earlier in the year, so go back and listen to those episodes about Deuteronomy where we explained that the laws are there to show us what God is like. Yeah. And they made a rule keeping the goal rather than knowing the God who gave them the principle in the first place.
Yeah. I have one more thing to say about this, but about this healing on the Sabbath. What do you think about this? I've written here, read between the lines. So sometimes we like to read between the lines and then other times we need to read it for what it is.
Sure.
But what do you think about this? The Pharisees are the villain in this story, right? Do you think healing on purpose in front of them isn't just about poking the bear, but perhaps for the love he has for them as individual people?
Absolutely.
Because they deserve to hear the gospel too, right?
Yep.
They deserve to see that Jesus is their saviour and he is the Messiah. Yep. And even though a lot of them weren't getting on board with that, he still has this love for them. Like, I'm not going to hide this from you. I'm not going to hide the gospel story from you. I want you to see it.
And many of them did. And so, in the gospel narratives, like you said, the Pharisees are seen as the enemy. I think we have a tendency to see the Pharisee as the enemy, but what your point is that Jesus loves all people. And historically in the early church, you see it in the book of Acts, numbers of Pharisees did become believers. So they were the closest religious sect to Jesus. If Jesus had to pick one of the 5 religious sects that he identified with, it would have been the Pharisees. He had a lot in common with them. But he also was still frustrated by their self-righteousness because it was keeping them from the kingdom. And so what your point is he did these miracles to show them up, confront them about their hypocrisy, but always with the hope that they would find him in the middle of it. I totally agree with that. And I think that makes us think, well, when are we Pharisees? Sometimes Jesus will be hard on us, but he's not hard because he's just purely angry. It's a mixture of anger against the injustice of the way we treat other people. Yes. And compassion because he wants us to see the error of our ways as well. Yeah. They're both together, Amanda.
Yeah. And the rest of the chapter talks about the narrow door. So we're talking about Jesus emphasizing that some who think they know him will be turned away. Is this to challenge complacency, all that sort of thing? And then we've also got him lamenting over Jerusalem. So it really kind
That
of
cycles back
reiterates
to the fig
what
tree
we're
thing
saying.
again.
Yeah.
Yep.
He I wrote here, I like this bit. He called Herod a fox.
A fox. Go tell that fox. I'm going to keep
Thought that was
casting out
cool.
demons and healing people today and tomorrow.
Yeah, but he's predicting his death and resurrection, but he's also expressing this love and sorrow that he has for those who will reject him or do reject him. And I love how he talks about hens gathering chicks. And for me, it just reiterates the father heart or the mother heart.
And in this case, yes, a mother heart. Yes, exactly.
This love that he has for all people, and he just wants to protect them and he wants to love them. And in the Pharisees' case, in this situation, he's trying to show them, guys, like, think about this a little bit more.
You don't know what you're missing out on.
Yes, exactly.
You think you have the key to life, but you've locked it up for yourself and locked it up for others. And if you could only recognize it. And so there's this anger against the injustice running parallel to compassion that people would see the error of their ways, that we would see the error of our Pharisaical ways. The two go hand in hand. And this chapter shows it.
Yeah.
It shows the judgment against the fig tree. It shows the judgment, but it also ends with, Jesus saying, oh, how long I've wanted to gather you together.
Yeah.
I wish, but now it's too late because you've refused to recognize it.
He's illustrating his desire for a relationship with us.
Yes.
But, yeah, his love, his father heart, his mother heart is really...
It's all coming through in Luke 13.
Yeah. Do you think this also, just to finish up this chapter, do you think this last part about lamenting over Jerusalem is kind of warning us a little bit about false teaching as well? Talking about, as he's talking about the significance of the fox but then the hen as well, and listening to others that aren't him, really?
Yeah, I think I have not thought about that, but that does fit. Yeah, when you compare the fox and the hen. Yeah, read it. Yeah.
I might just read the part that I'm talking about. Where am I? Oh, wrong chapter, that's why.
You're in the wrong chapter.
I'm in the wrong chapter.
I want to know how you... Oh, you're on your phone.
Yeah.
I could see her with a MacBook in front of her and she was scrubbing.
I've got
swiping her
MacBook,
fingers.
paper and a phone. Yeah.
Oh, you're swiping your fingers up and down, and I thought you can't do that on a MacBook, but you've got your phone sitting in front of you.
Yeah, I'm doing it all. All right, let's read this last little bit. At that time, some Pharisees said to him, "Get away from here." I'm reading from the NLT.
Yep.
From here, if you want to live. Herod Antipas wants to kill you. Go tell the fox that I will keep on casting out demons and healing people today and tomorrow. And the third day I will accomplish my purpose. I love that third day prediction there. Yes, today, tomorrow, and the next day I must proceed on my way, for it wouldn't do for a prophet of God to be killed except in Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers. How often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let me. What's this "but you wouldn't let me" part?
Because of this stubborn refusal of the religious people to recognise God's ways. And
now, look, your house is abandoned, and you will never see me again until you say, blessings on the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Does this also warn us of false teaching?
Well, I think yes. I think it's trying to show that you can fall for the false narrative, the self-righteous narrative. So I like to often think with the middle chapters of Luke that if you looked at what's an overarching theme, and it's very dangerous to say there's only one theme, but one that seems to thread through it all, these middle chapters from, say, 12 through to 17 where we're going today, that sort of thing, is largely self-righteousness. Jesus is calling the religious people on their self-righteousness. And that is leading to others stumbling. Woe to you who cause others to stumble, all that kind of stuff that Jesus says. So that's a big part of what he's saying here. So it's a warning against if you continue to follow false teaching, if you continue to follow the foxes, if you continue to go down a path that you think is right, it's ultimately going to lead to Jerusalem being abandoned.
Yeah.
To complete annihilation of those ways. And that's true in our lives. There is a way that Proverbs says there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end leads to destruction. This is the thing is when the man and the woman eat from the tree, it seems right to them.
Yeah.
We all fall into this trap. We've got to make sure we find Jesus. That's why next year we want to focus on it, because if we can focus on Jesus' teaching, we'll learn what's right. We'll learn wisdom for life. We'll learn Hokmah, or wisdom for life. And when we do, we'll be able to make the right choices. And hopefully our Jerusalems, our lives that represent Jerusalem, won't come crashing down.
Yeah.
There is a way that
glad
leads
you
to
said
life.
that, our lives that represent Jerusalem. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. All right, that's enough for chapter 13.
That's it.
We're on track with our time.
We are. I just looked at the clock and I was like, yes, we did
We'll talk to you tomorrow, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?